That was beautiful, thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Rogue Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, or RUF. I'm Adrienne Simmons, and I'm part of RUF because I found my spiritual home here and so many wonderful people. I'm also part of RUF because of the inspiration for social justice work I received during our services, our fellow members who walk the talk, and also from heroes and heroines I've had in the UU faith since I was a little girl. People like Viola Liuzzo, who fought for civil rights during the march from Selma to Montgomery. I also want to introduce our speaker, Mike Green. He's here with his wife, Emily, and his sons, Josiah and Caleb. And thanks to Facebook, I can also say that Josiah made the varsity soccer team as a freshman in high school, which is a big deal. We want to especially thank the members of the stream team who are helping make the online service happen and the members of the neighborhood team who welcome the on-site congregation. If you are a newcomer, we invite you to sign up for our mailing list by filling out the welcome form on roof.org, or a blue card if you're here in person and checking the box to sign up for email news. You will receive a weekly email that gives you all the information you need to make your decision about whether you'd like to join us on Sunday on-site or online. We are glad to have you with us at the service, and we invite you to join us in our mission, embracing diversity, empowering connection, and engaging in the work. We have two announcements. The first is this year's RUF Women's Retreat will be a one-day event on October 11th at the Peace House in Ashland. The planning committee is working on a lineup of activities guaranteed to provide the thoughtful, entertaining, connecting experience our retreats always deliver. A link to more information will be in next Friday's News to Note. Committee members will have registration forms in the RUF lobby September 7th. For questions about the retreat, contact either Zoe Laidlaw or Lyndon Crutch. And Lois, you have an announcement.
So next Sunday, after the service, you're going to get up. It's going to be a beautiful day. You're going to walk outside. There will be these tables of food that you have brought. There'll be these chairs to sit in that some people have put there. And we always have a wonderful time in our fall intergenerational potluck picnic. I'm going to read the names of all the people that have contributed so far. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But if you have not signed up, we can use help with the setup and the takedown. And the more we have, the easier it is. So please do that. I've got a sheet out there for that. And we could use another dessert and some more protein. Okay, look forward to it. Sign out sheets are up there, out in the foyer.
We begin each service by acknowledging that our building is built on land that began as the home of the Cow Creek, Umpqua, Lagawa, Tacoma, and Shasta peoples. We remind ourselves that Indigenous people are part of our communities and continue to experience the effects of colonization and genocide. We are committed to fighting for the worth and dignity of Indigenous people both in the community and around the world. Welcome, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Our opening words this morning are from Dr. Rebecca Savage. Welcome, beloveds, welcome. We come to spiritual community this morning with many hopes in our hearts. The hope for inspiration, the hope for comfort, the hope for renewal. In this time and space, May inspiration water our thirsty souls. In this time and space, may comfort blossom in the gardens of our hearts and bring us sweet relief. In this time and space, may renewal course through us. As electric as a surge of energy, as serene as a nourishing meal, as contagious as joy, and bring us vitality and rejuvenation. May our time together honor all the hopes that we hold within. May our time together bless us with the gifts of inspiration, comfort, and renewal. Let us worship together.
So our opening hymn today is in our gray hymnal, number 15, The Lone Wild Bird. Please rise and body your spirit. Hi, Colin.
You hear me? Oh, there we go. Oh, hello. Both verses. The lone wild bird in lofty flight is still with thee, nor leaves thy sight, and I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me. The ends of earth are in thy hand, the seas dark, deep, and far of land, and I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me.
It has become part of our tradition to also light an anti-racism candle for the anti-racism study group. And I'll say again the words of Martin Luther King: one day in the red clay hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slaveholders, and their daughters too, will sit down together at the table of brotherhood.
For the lighting of the peace candle.
Can't hear you.
Is it working? Yeah. Okay. For the lighting of the peace candle, these are words from the Reverend Martin Luther King. I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war, and that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word.
Salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom.
This is a condensed, I think we need sound again. A condensed information from the background chapter on Birmingham in Bull Connor's era and his letter from Birmingham jail, from Why We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King. If you had visited Birmingham before the 3rd of April and the 100th anniversary of the Negro's emancipation, you might have concluded that there was a city which had been trapped for decades in a Rip Van Winkle slumber. A city whose fathers had apparently never heard of Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, the Bill of Rights, the preamble to the Constitution, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, or the 1954 decision of the United States Supreme Court outline segregation of the public schools. If your powers of imagination were great enough to enable you to place yourself in the position of a Negro baby born and brought up to physical maturity in Birmingham, you would have pictured your life in the following manner. You would have been born in a Jim Crow hospital. You would attend a Jim Crow school. You would spend your childhood playing mainly in the street because the colored parks were abysmally inadequate. Birmingham closed down its parks and gave up its baseball team rather than integrate them. If you went shopping with your mother or father, you would trudge along as they purchased at every counter, except one, for in your city it was a violation of the law to serve food to Negroes at the same counter as whites. If your family attended church, you would go to a Negro church. If you wanted to visit a church attended by white people, you would not be welcome. You would be living in a city where the representatives of economic and political power refused to even discuss social justice with the leaders of your people. You would be living, in fact, in the most segregated city in America. There was one threat to the reign of white supremacy in Birmingham. As an outgrowth of the Montgomery bus boycott, protest movements had sprung up in numerous cities throughout the South. I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds.
During our program year, starting in next week, this is the time when stories are read to all ages, usually down below. But most of our kids are out in the garden this morning. So that's our summer plan. So I'll be telling you about the Birmingham Children's Crusade and what a difference they made. How many of you remember the Birmingham Children's Crusade or Children's March from television in 1963? Okay. Dr. King traveled to Birmingham early in 1963, hoping to help lead robust marches that would lead to so many arrests that the jails would be full. The system would break down. This was a strategy he had learned from works about Mahatma Gandhi's nonviolent protests. It proved difficult in Birmingham because adults feared loss of their livelihoods or eviction from their homes, and the threat to physical safety was great. Dr. King went ahead and marched with those willing, was arrested for parading without a permit, and wrote his letter from Birmingham jail to black clergy to encourage action and leadership from their churches. Dr. King was released and led meetings with the other ministers about this possibility. The adults and entire families went to the black churches and learned how important it was to try to fill the jails. But the children were the ones most eager to march. The very idea was controversial. Dr. King wasn't sure about it. But the Birmingham Children's Crusade became a plan. We will look at how it played out through the experiences of one little person, a 9-year-old who made a difference. Her name was Audrey Faye Hendricks, and I have a tiny little picture of her here from a book with some big, beautiful pictures drawn to look like her about what she did. This book is called The Youngest Marcher, the story of Audrey Faye Hendricks, a young civil rights activist, written by Cynthia Levinson and illustrated by Vanessa Brantley Newton. It's too long to read here today, but it's available in bookstores at the public library, and I'll be showing you a couple of pictures. First one. Here's Audrey with her family, shown having dinner. Her parents were hosting Dr. King and some of the other ministers. This was before the Children's Crusade was even planned. When Audrey heard them talk about civil rights, she spoke up about some of the things she wanted to be able to do. Eat at the store lunch counter, sit downstairs at the movies, have new textbooks in school, and more. Audrey stood up in a church meeting soon after to answer the call to march for freedom. She was the only child from her school who showed up on May 2nd, 1963 to demonstrate for freedom, but there were nearly 1,000 more other children from other schools. This was day one of the Children's Crusade. Audrey and her parents knew she would probably go to jail, so she brought her toothbrush. Audrey and the other marchers sang, "Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round," until they were stopped and arrested. She was probably the youngest person arrested that first day. The next day, while Audrey was still in jail, several thousand more children and youth marched and went to other places to demonstrate. But the authorities turned fire hoses on the marchers and even brought out the police dogs. These acts of violence were filmed by journalists and shown on the national evening news. People all over the country spoke out, and the marches continued. Adults lost their fear, many of them, and joined the children. Soon the jails were full. The system was disrupted. The city's political and commercial leaders then negotiated with Dr. King and movement leaders of Birmingham. So Audrey and the others were released from jail, and other things began to happen. President Kennedy submitted civil rights legislation to Congress in June, just weeks after the Children's Crusade. It took a while for it to get enacted later under Lyndon Johnson, but it led President Kennedy to act. And for Audrey, she could soon enjoy ice cream at the lunch counter at the 5 and 10 cent store. One little person can make a difference, especially with thousands of others. To learn more, you can search the web for Birmingham Children's Crusade in 1963 to find documentaries and written accounts. And there are several good books about the overall Birmingham civil rights movement.
So we're going to remain seated and sing that song. Ain't nobody gonna turn me round. The choir sang it a few weeks, maybe a month ago. It's a great protest song. Ain't Nobody Gonna Turn Me Around is the first verse. The second verse is Ain't Gonna Let No Hatred Turn Me Around. And the third verse is Ain't Gonna Let Injustice Turn Me Around. And it goes like this. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walk marching through the freedom land. So it goes like that. Here we go. Ready? And ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching to the freedom land. I'm gonna let no hatred turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching to the freedom land. Injustice, ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching to the freedom land.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I want to start by thanking Kate and Adrienne for setting the focus for our talk today. I want to thank them for bringing in the words of Dr. Savage, words of hope. And I want to thank them for acknowledging the truth hiding in plain sight. This isn't our land. I want to speak today to a central characteristic of the church, truth. And if I were being honest, I'm a little nervous. But in a nation that was built upon a foundation of lies and continues to reinforce false narratives about itself today, the question I ask of the church and of this fellowship is, how can we find truth in our society today? If the church stands for truth, if this fellowship stands for truth, and I see evidence of that here in this place, then where can we find the voice of the church and of the truth across our society? We're witnessing today hostile acts by government powers, targeting the most vulnerable people in our society. Where's the voice of the church? We hear the outcries daily from thousands of innocent people, men, women, and children, who are told they have violated the laws of this nation by merely existing on these lands without permission from the forces of power that stole this land from the indigenous people whose voices our government apparently cannot hear and does not respect. The irony is that the United States of America was established on these lands not by asking permission, but by acts of deception, the spread of disease, and the brute force of genocide. That is the truth. And today there is no evidence of national regret, remorse, repentance, requests for forgiveness, reconciliation, and repair of relationships through acts of reparations. America is not humble. It is not remorseful in the slightest. Instead, it has waged relentless war upon the very people that God has prioritized, the most vulnerable populations in our society. In other words, this nation has not walked the difficult path that leads to redemption. Instead, it has doubled down on enabling its own supreme power, its own sovereignty, and its own greatness in the face of an almighty God. Next year, the U.S. government has decreed a national celebration of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Such a mockery needs to be exposed by the truth of what the Declaration of Independence meant in 1776, what it meant in 1857 and in 1863, and what it meant in 1963, and what it means today. And whenever you are exposed to such a mockery of the truth, you'll face a decision. Will you courageously stand up for the truth or sit silent and allow the lies to prevail? This is the great question facing every assembly of the church anywhere and everywhere today, regardless of denomination. Will the church stand for truth in a society that was built on deception, lies, human trafficking, a culture of rape, torture, murder, and massacres of innocent people? Are those leaders of yesterday our national heroes today? Are we still teaching American children to revere the men who committed crimes against humanity? Will the voice of truth be elevated by the church, by this assembly, and others to disrupt generations of false narratives that have been reinforced in our schools, in our media, in our political messaging, and sadly, even in our faith communities? This is the question we must respond to today. Will we stand for truth in a society that doesn't value truth? The 1963 Children's March in Birmingham that was talked about today was an intentional strategic tactic deployed by the black Christian leaders led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the local Birmingham pastor Fred Shuttlesworth. King wrote that including the children in the efforts to disrupt racialized segregationist policies was the wisest decision they made. That controversial decision was part of a much larger national strategy of nonviolent, direct action protests in nearly 1,000 cities across America in 1963. That effort was known as the Negro Revolution. Dr. King called it the Third American Revolution. It was organized by 6 major black organizations working together through the black church. Dr. King wrote an entire book about it, Why We Can't Wait. The first chapter is titled The Negro Revolution. Why 1963? King spends 8 chapters answering that question, and today, there are no elementary schools, middle schools, or high schools in the Rogue Valley that I know of that uses this book to teach children today about the most important revolution in American history. That's not my characterization of the Negro Revolution. That's what the federal government said. And it put it in writing in 1965, after the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The federal government proclaimed the Negro Revolution to be the most important movement in American history, even more important than the American Revolution itself. The implication in this proclamation is that the Declaration of Independence for a white male power structure will be redeemed if the demands of the Negro Revolution are brought to a successful conclusion. But what were the demands of the Negro Revolution? End segregation in schools, end discrimination in housing, end discrimination in banking, and access to capital. None of those demands have been addressed. Note the absence of any demand to end the white male power structure. The current conditions of all three of those demands are measurably worse today than they were during the 1960s. And yet, where is the voice of the church? Why is this truth not widely known? What is being done to change these systemic conditions in society today? And where is the voice of those missing from the Negro Revolution? What is being done to reconcile the theft of lands and wealth from the indigenous peoples? When black children were marching in Birmingham, they were marching to effectuate change in how they were being treated by white Christians and the white male power structure in Birmingham. They were seeking systemic changes to the deplorable conditions they endured. Such changes required different laws, different economic systems, different public policies, and changes in private sector practices. Changes in the hearts and minds of white Christians and the white male power structure were required to change the deplorable conditions impacting the most vulnerable populations. Dr. King leveraged the institutional brutality targeting America's black children to appeal to the hearts of white Christians. But we must be mindful that those children were marching on the lands of the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek, and the Seminole tribes. Who was speaking up for them? Where was the voice of truth in the church? Dr. King, while sitting in a Birmingham jail, wrote a letter to 8 leaders of religious faiths. King understood that the conditions of American society were reflections of the conditions of people of faith in America. He believed the solutions would come from the Christian church. It was a majority of white Christians who fully embraced and supported an ideology of racial hierarchy, valuing and devaluing humans by a mythological construct of race and white supremacy. The first Abrahamic religion established by Europeans in the Western Hemisphere was Christianity. When Columbus discovered the islands of the Caribbean in 1492, he went back to Spain and he requested 2 things from King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella: an army and divine authority to conquer. He received both in 1493. The divine authority was issued by Pope Alexander VI in the form of a doctrine of discovery. It gave Columbus and all subsequent European explorers the Christian authority to conquer lands, control the resources, and enslave the people they found or kill them with impunity, as long as they were not Christians. The doctrine of discovery was invoked by Thomas Jefferson in 1792 when he was Secretary of State to justify the violent westward expansion of the United States. The U.S. Supreme Court in 1823 also invoked the Christian doctrine of discovery, and it did so multiple times since, including in the 21st century, ruling that the Oneida tribe did not have a claim to its rightful lands. The doctrine of discovery originated from Christianity. Christianity is the root of the establishment of this nation in the evil manner in which it was formed. The first European constitution written on this continent was not the U.S. Constitution. It was the 1780 Constitution of the state of Massachusetts. It was written by John Adams, the first American vice president under George Washington and the second president of the United States. Adams was one of the founding fathers. His Constitution, which was used as a template for the U.S. Constitution, explicitly required every elected white man to be a professing Christian. And when this nation was formed, it was established as a whites-only national citizenry. And the Supreme Court fully solidified that fact in the historical record with no ambiguity in 1857. When this nation was formed in 1776, the Declaration of Independence was a declaration of white male sovereignty. It was established as a white male power structure. That is what America stood for then. It is what America stands for now. A white male power structure. The colors in the American flag have not changed since the first symbolic flag representing the original 13 states. The blue stands for loyalty. The red stands for valor. And the white, it stands for purity. The single most important question those white founders grappled over was what to do with black people. The enslaved Africans had no land, no power, and no agency over their own fate. White men decided it. 8 of the 13 states said they would continue to enslave the African people. The remaining 5 allowed them to roam free, but they had no equal status to white people, and none were considered citizens of the whole United States. And equally important, the indigenous native peoples were regarded as merely impediments to the sovereignty of the white male power structure, which targeted the so-called free lands of the native peoples to expand their own power. In 1863, during the Second American Revolution, known as the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln issued an Emancipation Proclamation as a strategic war tactic to empower black people to fight for their own freedom. And Lincoln publicly admitted that were it not for the 200,000 black men fighting on the front lines and another 300,000 black men and women in support roles, the United States would not have defeated the Confederacy. And yet, 100 years later, during the centennial anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, 1963, Dr. King, in his most famous speech, didn't start with his dream that we talk about all today. He started with a clear acknowledgement of the deplorable conditions black Americans were enduring. He said this, right up at the top of his speech: "But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition." Where was the Christian church in 1963? That's when King wrote his famous letter from a Birmingham jail before he wrote his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. The church was divided over the issue of race. Is it still? In 1996, Congress passed a law that ought not to have been needed. It was the Church Arson Prevention Act of 1996. Congress felt the need to pass a new law to prohibit the burning of black churches in America because in that year alone, 140 black churches were set afire. This is the same shameful condition Dr. King faced when he was leading the Negro Revolution. It was the ugly acts of violence targeting the black church that cost the lives of 4 little black girls in Birmingham in the basement of their church. Today, too many of the faithful sitting in congregations throughout the Rogue Valley do not know this history. Too many of us have been taught to revere the white male power structure known as America. We see the Declaration of Independence through a lens of false narratives, while the truth hides in plain sight. It's silent. Will we give voice to the truth? Isn't that the role of the church? Isn't it the role of this assembly? Isn't that the role of humans throughout society? But the truth indicts the church as not just complicit in the evils of this society, but the root cause. Will the church repent? Will the church not just acknowledge its role and repent, but will it teach the truth, expose the lies, and stand up to the false narratives that are still promoted and reinforced today in our schools, our media, our political messaging, and sadly, in many churches throughout the Rogue Valley, throughout this state, and throughout this nation? Will we seek forgiveness? Will we seek to reconcile with those populations still being harmed and crying out today? Will we repair the damage caused by our nation? Will we walk the difficult path to redemption by the Almighty? Those questions can only be answered by each of you individually. Will you stand for truth or sit silent while the lies in our society prevail? We were all born into a society that none of us created. No blame, no shame. We all inherited this society that we live in from a 20th century of segregationist laws, economic systems, public policies, and private sector practices governed by systemic racism and a white male power structure. That didn't magically change with the calendar. But we didn't create this mess. But we did inherit a responsibility for the conditions of the society that we pass to future generations. So we have a responsibility to learn the truth, embrace the truth, and share the truth. I believe the truth has a power all its own to transform hearts and minds. All we need to do is be a messenger of the truth, and that takes courage in every generation. So the question I leave with you all today is simply, are you willing to courageously stand and raise the voice of truth in today's society? Thank you.
On fifth Sundays, we take an offering for the minister's discretionary fund. This allows us to give money to people who are in crisis. The fund has paid rent, deposits, utility bills, auto repairs, education expenses, and medical bills for those who would not be able to have what they need any other way. We do work with local organizations to make sure the need is real, and they let us know what is needed. So I appeal to you this fifth Sunday to let you know that the need is great. Giving today is the most direct way this congregation has of making a real difference in the lives of those who are struggling to survive here in our Rogue Valley. Your generosity can save lives, keep families safe, and just keep people going. This is one of the ways we engage in the work of making the world a better place. Please give generously as you are able. This is love in action. If you are joining us online, you can mail your gifts to 87 4th Street, Ashland, Oregon 97520. To give online, go to tinyurl.com, RVUUF offering, and follow instructions there. To give by text, simply text $$ and the amount you'd like to donate to 541-229-4229. Please make sure to select Fifth Sunday. If you need support, please contact Reverend Sean using the form on roof.org. We will do our best to help, and he will be back in the pulpit next week. For these gifts and all the gifts you bring to our community and into this world, thank you. For these gifts and all the gifts you bring to our community and into the world, thank you.
Closing hymn today is another protest song. Some of you that were with me in our first protest this year, the Hands Off, we were singing it, and it was really rewarding to have a lot of other people join in. So please rise in body or spirit, open your gray hymnal to number 170. If you do not want to hold your hymnal, you don't need to. I will call out the words for the verses. And this is a great opportunity, if you're not holding your hymnal, to hold hands.
We are a gentle, angry people. We are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Justice seeking.
We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Young and old.
We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Land of many colors.
We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Gay and straight together.
We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
A gentle, loving people.
We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our
And in closing, these are words by Jim McGaugh. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in mindless oblivion. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go without challenging yourself or others. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in utter ease and comfort. When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace, seeking justice. I mean go in peace, committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace that is created when together we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace.